Under the burning sky of Copper Creek, a boy bargains with fate, a girl clings to innocence, and a man shaped by loss makes a promise that will cost him his solitude. Prey. The September sun beat down like judgment. Copper Creek shimmered under it, a tired town crouched at the feet of the Rockies, where dust covered everything that tried to live. It clung to boards and boots and dreams too stubborn to die. Danny Fletcher stood in the middle of it, 14 years old, skinny but unbent, staring into the shadow of the man who could decide his fate. His boots were torn at the toes, his shirt a patchwork of hope held together by thread and will. The wind toyed with his hair, but he didn't flinch. Behind him, Lucy, 9, pale and clutching a ragged doll, held his sleeve like it was the last piece of the world, still hers. Her eyes were too wide, too knowing for her age. She had learned what it meant to lose everything and still keep breathing. Across from them stood Ezra Blackwood, rancher, legend, and rumor rolled into one. Broad shoulders beneath a weathered coat, a face carved by 50 years of wind and work. He looked like the land itself had built him, all edges and silence. His eyes, dark under the brim of his hat, gave nothing away. "Please, Mr. Blackwood," Danny said, voice cracking like dry wood. "I ain't asking for me. The Morrison gang's coming. I seen 'em rob the bank last month, saw their faces. They said they'd kill whoever talked. I heard 'em in the saloon, they know I saw." His hands trembled, but his jaw stayed tight. "They'll come, sir. But Lucy, she don't know nothin'. She's just a kid. I'm askin', please, take her. Give her a chance." Lucy pulled at his sleeve. "Danny, no. You promised Mama and Papa we'd stay together." That sound, her voice breaking on the word together, cut through him deeper than fear ever could. He knelt, dust rising like smoke around them. "I remember, Luce," he whispered. "But sometimes you gotta break your own heart to keep someone safe." She didn't wail. She just stood there trembling, small and silent, grief pressed down into something that would never leave her. Ezra watched without speaking. The world went quiet around them. Blacksmith hammer, wagon creak, a distant bark, all of it faded beneath that stillness. "Speak," and finally, Ezra's voice came low, gravel on thunder. "You say Morrison's after you. That's a heavy thing, boy. Jed Morrison don't leave witnesses. You sure he knows it was you?" Danny swallowed hard. One of 'em, tall scar on his jaw, saw me clear. Looked me dead in the eyes. I'll never forget him. Ezra's gaze flicked toward Lucy, who hugged her doll like a prayer. "And you'd leave her behind to save her?" "She's all I got left," Danny whispered. "Our folks died of cholera last spring. We been sleeping in barns, but I ain't letting her die because of me." Ezra let out a long breath, eyes narrowing toward the horizon. He said nothing for a while, just listened to the dry wind pushing through the street. Finally, he spoke. "What if I told you I might take both of you?" Danny blinked. "Both? But I told you, they're after me." Ezra's hand rested easy on his gun belt. "Let me worry about the Morrison gang. I've seen worse men come calling. My ranch is a day's ride north. Got good men, good fences. You'd be safer there." Hope flickered in Danny's eyes, dangerous, fragile hope. "Why would you help us, sir? You don't even know us." Ezra's mustache twitched, almost a smile. "Maybe I got my reasons. Maybe I see something worth betting on. You come stay a month. If the danger's real, we'll face it. If not," he shrugged. The silence after said the rest. Lucy lifted her tear-streaked face. "We'd get to stay together." "Lovely idea, little miss." Danny's voice came slow. "What do you want from us?" "Work," Ezra said. "My ranch don't run on charity. You pull your weight, you stay." It sounded too fair, but fairness was a luxury Copper Creek had forgotten. Danny looked around at the dying town, the hollow windows, the dry wind, and made his choice. "When do we leave?" Ezra mounted his black stallion, Thunder. The horse pawed the dust like it wanted to run straight into the sunset. An hour, Ezra said. Old Pete's wagon'll haul supplies north. You ride in the back. Once we go, there's no looking back. Danny nodded. Yes, sir. Ezra tipped his hat and rode off down the street, hooves drumming like the start of something dangerous. The sound lingered after he was gone. They stood there, small against the empty sky. Danny, Lucy whispered, "You really think the bad men are coming?" He looked down at her. He didn't know. Maybe he'd imagined that look, that threat. But you couldn't gamble with the only family you had left. "We'll be safer with Mr. Blackwood," he said softly. "Even if the bad men never come, we'll have food and a bed." She nodded. He didn't tell her he was scared too. They gathered what little they owned, a sack of clothes, a dull knife, their mother's locket, and waited. When the wagon rolled up, creaking and coughing dust, the sun was low, turning the Rockies red. Ezra rode alongside, all purpose and silence. His presence carried the kind of authority no badge could buy. Danny and Lucy climbed in among the barrels. The boards were hot under their hands, the air thick with heat, and the smell of rope and grain. "This is it," Danny whispered. "Our new life." Lucy curled beside him, eyes big as the horizon. "I'm scared." He pulled her close. "Me too, but we've got each other." The wagon lurched forward. Behind them, Copper Creek shrank into the dust, a handful of shacks and ghosts fading into gold. Ahead lay the long road north, mountains, wind, and a future neither could name. Ezra rode beside them, hat low, eyes fixed on the road ahead. The wind tugged at his coat. His face stayed unreadable. But for a fleeting second, something broke through, a small, private smile. The first part of his plan had begun. Somewhere far off, thunder rolled, or maybe it was just the echo of hooves, carrying three fates into the unknown. And behind them, the dust rose like ghosts that refused to rest. In the valley beneath the peaks, a boy earns his place, a girl finds her laughter again, and a lonely man begins to remember how to feel. But the closer mercy and love draw together, the more they reveal what time tried to bury. Untamed. The trail wound north, through hills that smelled of sage and pine. By the second day, the air grew thinner, cooler. The wagon wheels groaned against the mountain road, each turn a gamble against the rocks. Old Pete, reins in hand, spat tobacco and said little. The man's face was like dried riverbed, cracked, hard, but still carrying the memory of water. Ezra rode ahead on thunder, posture straight as a post, eyes scanning the horizon like a man who'd learned not to trust peace too long. Danny sat in the back beside Lucy, the world opening around them, wider than anything they'd known. She leaned against him, clutching her doll. The silence between them was soft, the kind that came after too much fear and too little rest. "Danny," she whispered, "do you think Mr. Blackwood's a good man?" Danny watched the rancher's silhouette against the sun. "I think he's a man who means what he says." Lucy nodded, though her fingers gripped tighter. The wind caught her hair and tossed it like wheat across her face. By nightfall, they stopped in a grove of aspen. The trunks glowed white in the firelight, like old spirits watching over the living. The smell of smoke and pine mixed with cold air above. The stars blinked sharp and close, like lanterns hung too low. Ezra fed the horses. Old Pete built the fire. Danny unpacked what he could while Lucy rubbed her hands near the warmth. "How much further?" Danny asked. Ezra settled onto a flat rock beside the flames. "By noon tomorrow, we'll crest the ridge. You'll see my valley, the kind of land worth every scar it took to tame. We demise the chant to prior says down the way. Bond and sage will fall. Don't killed millionen belay me the truck of this king curty for butter tom bit as a cat to like yes stop and bow." Ezra looked into the fire for a long time before speaking. 20 years. Started with one horse and a prayer I didn't think God was listening to. He glanced up, eyes lit by flame. Work like that'll teach you what matters and what don't. Lucy sat quiet beside her brother, the fire painting gold in her hair. "What's your horse's name, Mr. Blackwood?" she asked softly. "Dranan some sechiman. You're to get the raised with mass that follows a promise," her brow furrowed. "What kind of promise?" Look at her for a long moment. The kind a man keeps, even when it hurts. Newest examples, a period. Dinner was beans, salt pork, and biscuits hard as fence posts, but they were warm. Lucy fell asleep not long after, her doll tucked under her chin. Danny stayed up, eyes wide to the stars. The sky here was so full, it made him feel both small and safe. Ezra noticed him staring. "You watch the stars often, boy." Danny shrugged. "Never stayed anywhere long enough." Ezra grunted. "Out here, they'll keep you from getting lost. Learn their paths. They'll tell you where you are when the land don't." He poked the fire. Sparks lifted like tiny souls heading home. After a while, Danny said, "Why'd you take us in? Most men wouldn't." Ezra didn't look up. "Maybe I got tired of watching folks get eaten alive by this world. Sometimes you help because you can, even if you don't know why." Danny nodded, quiet. Ezra's voice lowered, thoughtful. "You said you'd give yourself up for your sister. You meant that?" "Yes, sir. She's all I got." Ezra looked at him, something old and heavy behind his eyes. "That kind of love's rare. Don't lose it." The wind rolls across the open plains, whispering stories of men who came before. Dust rises beneath the hooves of tired horses, and the sun bleeds gold across the endless sky. Out here, names don't matter much. What counts is courage, the kind that shows when the odds are long and the bullets are few. Every trail tells a story. Every campfire hides a memory. Some came for gold, others for glory, but most just wanted a place to call their own. These are expected by the news clean audio. Every campfire hides a memory. Some came for gold, others for glory, but most just wanted a place to call their own. Danny didn't know it yet, but that night, under that sky, a bond was sealed. Not by blood, but by quiet understanding. Fusional classors. By morning, frost kissed the grass. The wagon climbed switchbacks through gray rock and wild pine. The higher they rose, the sharper the air cut the lungs. When they reached the ridge, the world fell open. Men Bofetch, all abowly, vast and green, a silver river cutting through it like glass. Herds of cattle grazed the open plain. Cottonwoods shimmered along the creek. And there, standing proud against the mountains, was Blackwood Ranch, a house of timber and sweat and stubborn faith. Ezra reined in thunder. "Welcome home." Edge. Danny's breath caught. "It's beautiful." Ezra's voice softened, just a trace of pride. Took 2 decades to make it look easy. Lucy leaned over the wagon edge, eyes wide. "We're gonna live here?" Ezra turned in the saddle, the corner of his mouth lifting. "If you're willing to work for it, then Dada, our man." The wagon rolled down the trail into the valley. The smell of sage and horses and wood smoke filled the air, the scent of a world that belonged to the living. Ezra's men called to one another across the yard. Dogs barked, cattle lowed, hammers struck nails. It was rhythm, not chaos, life in motion. When the wagon stopped, Ezra dismounted, boots heavy in the dirt. He held a hand out to Lucy. "Welcome home, little miss." She took it without hesitation. Danny climbed down beside her, dust rising around their feet. He didn't know it yet. None of them did. But this place would test everything they were made of. Behind them, the mountains watched in silence as Ayers, their self, The morning bell at Blackwood Ranch rang before sunrise, sharp, metallic, certain. It was the kind of sound that got into a man's bones. Danny was already awake when it came. He'd slept light, half expecting to be told it was all a dream. But the smell of coffee, hay, and cold iron was real. So was the sound of men's voices outside, low and steady. Lucy was brushing her hair near the window, the first pink light spilling over her face. "Come on, Danny," she said. "Mr. Blackwood said work starts when the sun does." He grinned, pulling on his boots. "Then we better not make it wait." Outside, the valley yawned awake, lanterns flickering, horses snorting, the clang of buckets and gates. Ezra stood near the main corral, hat low, already in motion. He looked like a man carved from the very idea of morning. "First rule," he said when Danny approached, "the land don't wait. You keep it fed, fixed, and fenced. You slack, it'll take back what you built. Miguel'll show you the ropes. You work, you eat. Simple as that." Danny nodded, eager and respectful. Ezra turned to Lucy, who stood clutching her doll, half hiding behind her brother. "Rosa's expectin' you in the kitchen. She'll teach you what keeps a ranch alive when the storms come." Lucy beamed. "Yes, sir." Ezra's eyes softened, just a flicker. "You can call me Ezra when it's just us." She smiled shyly. "Okay, Mr. Ezra." He almost smiled back. "Ren, tubu guilty." The day rolled on hot and hard. Danny followed Miguel, the foreman, a man with a scar across his cheek and eyes kind as dusk. Together they mended fences, shoveled stalls, and hauled feed till the sweat ran dark through the dust. "You work like you mean it," Miguel said, handing him water. "Most boys your age would have quit by now." Danny drank, panting. "Quit what keeps you alive." Miguel laughed softly. Fair point. By noon, Rosa came from the house carrying a basket of bread and stew. Her braid glinted black in the sunlight, her skin sun-warmed and strong. Her presence quieted even the dogs. "Eat," she said. "You'll faint if you don't." Danny smiled shyly. "Thank you, ma'am." Her accent wrapped around her laugh. "Just rises beneath the hooves of tired horses, and the sun bleeds gold across the endless sky. Out here, names don't matter much. What counts is courage. The kind that shows when the odds are long and the bullets are few. Every trail tells a story. Every campfire hides a memory. Some came for gold, others for glory. But most just wanted a place to call their own." From the porch, Ezra watched the moment, the kindness, the laughter. His jaw tightened, though he couldn't say why. He'd buried his heart long ago. He didn't expect it to stir just because a woman smiled at a boy. But Rosa's laughter had a way of catching on the air like light through dust. It reminded him of what quiet felt like before it turned to loneliness. He turned away. He was making. And the plummet of the grace is a dust rises beneath the hooves of tired horses, and the sun bleeds gold across the endless sky. That evening, the valley glowed amber and purple under the setting sun. Lucy helped Rosa wash dishes in a tin basin. Danny returned, muscles sore but pride alive. "Rosa says, I can bake bread tomorrow." Lucy said, beaming, "Real bread, ah." "She'll do fine," Rosa said gently. "She's got her mother's patience, I think." Ezra stepped in, filling the doorway like a shadow made of resolve. "Miguel says you don't shy from work," he said to Danny. "No, sir," Danny answered. "Feels good to have something to do that matters." Ezra nodded once. "Keep that up, and this land'll respect you back." He turned to Rosa. "Appreciate you taking care of them." Rosa's eyes met his. Warm, steady. "It's what we do here, Ezra. Keep the hungry ones whole." The wind rolls across the open plains, whispering stories of men who came before. Dust rises beneath the hooves of tired horses, and the sun bleeds gold across the endless sky. Out here, names don't matter much. What counts is courage. The kind that shows when the odds are long and the bullets are few. Every campfire hides a memory. Some came for gold, others for glory. But most just wanted a place to call their own. Ezra touched his hat and stepped back into the dusk. Rosa watched him go, a soft ache settling in her chest. Zwing, Legestin Crastagoshan. Night came with cold wind and a sky so clear it hurt. Danny couldn't sleep. Through the window he saw Ezra out by the fence line, lantern swinging, checking the land alone. It struck the boy how a man could have everything and still move through the dark like he owed something he couldn't repay. He watched until Ezra vanished into the black, then whispered to the dark, "He's lonely, Lucy. That's what he is." But she was already asleep, her doll safe in her arms. Outside, the wind shifted through the cottonwoods, like an old secret whispering to anyone brave enough to listen. The snows of the high country hide more than tracks. They bury the past, soften the proud, and test every heart still brave enough to love. In the stillness of Blackwood Ranch, truth will thaw what even time could not. Years employed desecration. The first snow came before its due. It drifted slow and soundless through the valley, whitening fences, rooftops, and the river's glassy skin. The world went hushed, the kind of silence that carries its own kind of holiness. The cattle were penned, the fields asleep, and the mountains stood wrapped in their white shawls, ancient and watchful. Inside the main house, the fire snapped and murmured. Lucy sat near it, humming to her doll, the melody small and sweet. Rosa mended one of Danny's shirts by the light, her fingers moving steady, her face calm as a prayer. Ezra stood by the window, watching the snow fall, shoulders heavy, jaw clenched, like a man trying to hold a secret inside too long. For weeks, the days had been good, quiet, steady. The boy had found his rhythm, the girl her laughter. Even Ezra had been caught smiling once or twice, though he pretended otherwise. Rosa had seen the change in him, a loosening, as if the ghosts that rode his silence had finally begun to fade. But that evening, something different rode the wind. Something sharp, restless, unfinished. Ezra turned from the window. "Danny," he said, his voice low, "come take a walk with me." The boy set down his carving knife and followed him out into the cold. The door closed behind them with a soft click that made Rosa pause in her stitching. Outside, the snow squeaked under their boots. The air smelled of pine and iron. A lantern swung from Ezra's hand, throwing long shadows over the drifts as they walked toward the ridge. When they reached the rise overlooking the valley, the same spot where Danny had first seen his new home, Ezra stopped. The wind tugged at his coat, lifted the brim of his hat. "You ever still think about the Morrison gang?" he asked quietly. Danny frowned. "Sometimes, not much." "Why?" Ezra's breath clouded in the dark. "Because I owe you the truth about them." The boy blinked, uncertain. "What do you mean?" Ezra's gaze didn't waver. "There never was any Morrison gang after you. The wind rolls across the open plains, whispering stories of men who came before." Danny shook his head. "That can't be true. You saw a robbery," Ezra interrupted softly. "That much was real. But those men are long gone, locked up before I even found you. They never knew your name." The boy's breath hitched. "Then why? Why'd you take us in?" Ezra lowered the lantern. The light carved lines deep into his face, every wrinkle a story. "Because I needed to know what kind of soul you were, what kind of man you might become." Danny stared at him, stunned. "I lied," Ezra said, the words like gravel. "I made you believe danger was coming so I could see what you'd do, whether you'd protect yourself or that little sister of yours." The boy's voice cracked. "You were testing us?" "I was testing you," Ezra said. and you chose her, without flinching. That's the kind of man I'd trust with my life. Danny's eyes filled. You lied to us, sir. I did. Ezra's voice softened, almost breaking, and I've carried that weight since the day I did it. I thought I was teaching a lesson. Turns out I was learning one. He looked out across the valley, snow swirling like ghosts in the wind. My wife and son died of cholera, same spring as your folks. Buried 'em under those cottonwoods yonder. After that, I stopped talking to God and started talking to the wind. Then I heard about 2 orphans scrapping for crumbs in Copper Creek, and I saw a second chance I didn't deserve. Danny's jaw tightened. So we were just a way for you to feel whole again. Ezra met his eyes, fierce and clear. No, boy, you were the reason I started breathing again. For a long while, nothing moved but the snow. Then Danny whispered, "Does Lucy know?" "Not yet." "She'll be hurt," Danny said, "but she'll forgive you." Ezra swallowed. "And you?" Danny looked at the man, the liar who had saved him, the stranger who had become a father in all but name. The snow fell between them, soft as mercy. "I don't know," the boy said, "but I'm still here, ain't I?" Ezra nodded. "That's all a man can ask." "You have gone to thank a Marion." Back inside, Rosa looked up as they entered. Her eyes caught Ezra's, and she read the truth there before a word was spoken. "You told him," she said quietly. Ezra nodded. He deserved it. Rosa set her mending aside. "He's a good boy, better than most men I've met." Ezra gave a weary half-smile. "He reminds me of the son I buried." Rosa stood, crossing the room until she stood close enough to feel his breath. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "You didn't bring them here out of guilt, Ezra. You brought them here because you needed to live again." He stared at her, unguarded now. The lamplight caught the tears he refused to let fall. "Rosa," he murmured, "I don't know what I'm doing anymore." She reached up, resting her hand on his sleeve. "You're doing fine," she said softly. "You're just remembering how to feel." For a heartbeat, the world went quiet around them, fire crackling, snow hushing the earth outside, the steady rhythm of two hearts that had been alone too long. Then, in a moment that felt neither bold nor sinful, only right, Ezra's hand found hers. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Love in the West was never loud. It was the quiet kind that stayed when everything else was gone. As with your journey, Chajmal. Days passed. The truth settled not like a wound, but a scar that healed clean. Lucy cried when she learned what Ezra had done, but her tears didn't last. "You're still Papa Ezra," she said, small arms wrapping around his waist. The end. And that was that. The wind rolls across the open plains, whispering stories of men who came before. Dust rises beneath the hooves of tired horses, and the sun bleeds gold across the endless sky. Out here, names don't matter much. What counts is courage. The kind that shows when the odds are long and the bullets are few. And slowly, the house that had once echoed with ghosts filled, instead, with laughter. One morning, Ezra and Danny stood together on the porch, the sky gray and bright above the snow. Someday, Ezra said, "This land will be yours and Lucy's, if you'll have it." Danny looked at him, stunned. "Oh," Ezra nodded. "The papers are already on the way. Spring'll make it official." Danny's throat worked. "I'll take care of it. Same way you did." Ezra smiled faintly. "You already are." Aims of growth. Spring came fast that year, the thaw loud with rushing water and birdsong. The valley turned green again, the river gleaming like steel in sunlight. New calves stumbled on fresh legs, and Rosa hung linens to dry on the line, her laughter catching in the wind. A rider arrived from town one afternoon, dust on his coat and an envelope in his hand. Papers sealed with wax, adoption, title, legacy. That night, The house gathered for supper. The long table glowed under lantern light. Rosa placed wildflowers in a jar at its center. The men raised tin cups. Lucy beamed, her hands folded neat in her lap. Ezra stood, holding the papers, voice thick as he read. Danny Fletcher and Lucy Fletcher, from this day forth, you bear my name. Blackwood, not by blood, but by choice. The room fell still. Then Lucy leapt up, shouting, Papa Ezra! Her voice broke like dawn through the dark. The men cheered, clapped backs, raised their cups. Rosa caught Ezra's gaze across the table, her smile small and proud, full of everything words couldn't say. Bishopin, Ramaugazine, and Durimus, Encyclopedioctane. That Shielen Rags was very vermart for this failure. Trustatimin sedatives to see talis rain yokes yustles, Tomums and hasten lees easen day. Weeks later, on a golden evening, Ezra and Danny stood again on the ridge where the whole story had turned. Below, the valley glowed green and alive. Lucy and Rosa walked by the river, their laughter mingling with the sound of water and wind. Ezra rested a hand on the young man's shoulder. You've done good, son, better than I ever could have asked. Danny looked out across the land. You gave us a chance, sir. That's all anyone needs. Insterback hack, every and a fray. Shanuel, stay, coward here. No shup, out and out it. The sun sank low, painting their shadows long across the hill. Ezra breathed in the scent of earth and rain, the sound of cattle far off, and the easy rhythm of belonging. Come on, he said, turning toward the house. Let's go home. They walked side by side, the last light catching on their coats, the world behind them wrapped in gold. And as the sun dipped below the peaks, the wind moved through the valley, soft, approving, whispering the final truth every heart in the West learns sooner or later. Some loves are born in fire. Others are built from mercy, and the strongest are forged from both. Abertations. Epilogue. The sound of belonging. A year passed. The ranch thrived, fences mended, fields green, laughter echoing off the hills. Lucy baked biscuits that vanished faster than she could make them. Danny rode the herds, his voice carrying across the plain like a man born to the saddle. Rosa and Ezra spent evenings on the porch, silent more often than speaking, but in that silence was peace and the language of those who had nothing left to prove. When the wind rolls across the open plains, whispering stories of men who came before, dust rises beneath the hooves of tired horses, and the sun bleeds gold across the endless sky. Out here, names don't matter much. What counts is courage, the kind that shows when the odds are long and the bullets are few. Every trail tells a story. Every campfire hides a memory. Some came for gold, others for glory, but most just wanted a place to call their own. When the wind swept through the valley, it carried the smell of sage and coffee, the sound of horses and laughter, the sound of home. And when the sun slipped behind the Rockies, it caught 3 silhouettes on the porch, a man, a woman, and 2 grown children, bound not by blood, but by the quiet, unbreakable mercy of love. The kind of love the West remembers, the kind that outlasts the dust.